Chosen one, this is an emergency, and you are already very late, but not in the way you think you are. Stop everything. Whatever is open, whatever is calling, whatever is waiting, let it wait one more breath, because what is unfolding here is older than every clock you have ever obeyed. There is a reason a sense of lateness has been pressing against your chest for months now. There is a reason your sleep has been thin, why your mornings begin with a quiet panic that has no name. The hour you thought you missed has not actually moved. The hour you thought passed you is the very hour you are standing inside right now. Heaven is not running on the calendar that has been judging you. Heaven runs on a different counting, and a force older than measurement has pulled you to this exact moment to tell you what no one in your life has had the words to explain. Listen with the part of you that already knew this was coming. Do not look away. The next 20 minutes will reorder how you understand every year you thought you wasted. This is not a casual message, so let me name plainly what is being placed in your hands tonight before another minute passes. You are going to learn why the lateness pressing on you is real, but pointing the opposite direction from what you have been reading it as. You are going to discover what was actually being formed inside you during the years you called wasted. And, before this closes, you will walk away with a specific practice that you can begin in your own home tonight to start recovering a way of counting time that the world was never going to give you on its own. There is also one more layer of this conversation, hidden until its hour. I will not introduce it before its time, but it is here, and you will feel it the moment it surfaces. If something in you just recognized what I am saying, if a quiet yes rose up before you had time to think about it, type 777 in the comments. Not for me. For the part of you that needs to anchor this recognition before we go any further. The yes is the first signal that the door you thought had closed is still open. The recognition you are feeling right now is not random. It is the first sign that something in you was already reaching for this hour before this hour found you. Stay with me through this entire walk. I do not say this casually. There is a specific reason. What we begin with is the diagnosis. 3 angles on why the feeling of being late has fastened itself to your life. Then we descend into the root, a framework traced back to the original language of an ancient teacher who left 2 words for time, not 1. From there we open 3 paths chosen ones walk to recover their real timing, and one of those paths is something science has only recently mapped that I will introduce at the right hour. By the time we close, you will have a different relationship with the years you thought were wasted, a different relationship with the years you have left, and a closing prayer prepared specifically to seal the shift. I will not promise you a miracle tonight. I will give you what is real, and what is real is more than you have been allowed to believe. To begin where most people do not want to begin, I have to take you to the surface first. Because the lateness has a shape, it has a behavior, and until you can see how that behavior has been moving through your days, you cannot release it. So, let me name it directly. If you have ever found yourself opening the same screens again and again, looking at the lives of people who started where you started, but ended up somewhere you did not, that pattern has a name. It is not curiosity. It is calculation. You are doing math you did not consent to. If you have ever found yourself scrolling through the achievements of people your age, of people younger than you, of people who used to be where you were 5 years ago, and you walked away from those screens, feeling smaller, feeling thinner, feeling more behind, that pattern has a name too. It is not jealousy. It is the wrong measurement system trying to confirm what it already decided about your life. If you have ever found yourself, in the quiet hours, running through the timeline of your years and counting what should have been there by now, first job by 25, settled relationship by 30, financial freedom by 40, recognition by 50, and watching each gate pass without your name on it. That pattern is not personal. It is inherited. Someone gave it to you. You did not write it. If you have ever found yourself lying in bed at 3 in the morning, doing the math of your life in your head, adding up years, subtracting losses, calculating what is left, comparing what is left to what is needed, and you have stood up the next morning, more tired than when you laid down, you have not been resting. You have been auditing yourself with someone else's spreadsheet every night for years. I want you to take that in. The math you have been doing was not for your life. It was for someone else's life. Someone you were never supposed to become. On a timeline you were never supposed to walk, measured against milestones that were never your assignment. That is the first truth I want you to receive tonight. I am going to slow down here, because the part of you that has been doing that math is exhausted, and it deserves to be told the truth. The screens, the comparisons, the midnight calculations, none of that is weakness in you. None of that is character failure. None of that is laziness, or distraction, or evidence that something is wrong with how you were built. What you have been doing is what a person does when they are trying to find themselves on a map that was never drawn for them. You can stand at the corner of every street on that map, and you will not find your name. You can run faster, work harder, sleep less, scroll more, and the map will not show you where you are. The map cannot show you where you are. It was not made for the assignment your soul carries. This is the first behavior of feeling late. The compulsive checking, the compulsive comparing, the compulsive math. And I want to invite you, gently, to begin laying that down. Not because it is easy, because it is the first weight that has to come off before the rest of this conversation can land. There is something I want you to picture, gently, in the privacy of your own mind. Imagine the pattern itself has a body. The calculation has a posture. The spreadsheet you have been carrying is a person who has been standing in the corner of every room you have walked into for years now, whispering numbers in your ear while you tried to live your life, whispering how far behind you are, whispering who has already passed you, whispering what you will not get to anymore. That presence is not yours. It does not belong in your house. And in the silence of your own chest, right now, you are allowed to gently turn toward it and say, "You do not live here anymore. The numbers you have been whispering are not the numbers of my life." You do not have to say it out loud. You can say it inside. The silence is enough. But the screens are only one expression of the lateness behavior. There are others, and I have to name them, because the pattern has slipped into ordinary moments of your life and disguised itself as practical thinking. If you have ever set a goal for yourself and felt, almost immediately, that the goal was already too late before you began, because someone has already done it, because you should have started years ago, because the window has already passed, that is, the behavior. It is so quiet it disguises itself as wisdom. But it is not wisdom. It is the calculation poisoning the seed before the seed has a chance to fall into the ground. If you have ever begun something with real energy, and within the first week you stopped, not because the thing was wrong, but because the voice in the back of your mind began doing the math of how far you should have come if you had started at the right age, and the math made the new thing feel pointless before it could take root, that is the behavior in one of its most painful forms. It does not just compare you to others. It compares you to the version of yourself you were supposed to be by now. And it uses that comparison to pull you off your own path, even when your own path was finally moving. If you have ever stayed awake longer than you needed to, taking in the winds of strangers, hoping that something in their story would unlock something in your own, and walked away tired, but not changed, hungry, but not fed, that is the behavior, looking for relief in the very mirror that is wounding it. If you have ever walked into a room of your peers, or a family gathering, or a reunion you almost did not attend, and the first thing your mind did was begin assigning rankings, who is doing well, who is ahead, who is behind, where you fall in the order, and you walked out of that room more drained than when you walked in. Even though nothing dramatic had happened, that is the behavior, running the same calculation. It has been running for so long that it does it before you give it permission. You did not invent this pattern. You inherited it. You were taught it. And the cost of carrying it has been more than you have been able to admit, even to yourself. The pattern has cost you energy you did not have to spare. It has cost you nights of sleep you needed. It has cost you the simple pleasure of being inside your own life, on your own clock, on your own schedule, doing your own small things in your own way. It has cost you the small mercies, the cup of coffee in the morning that does not have to mean anything, the quiet hour after work that does not have to be productive, the slow Sunday that does not have to lead to anything. The behavior has been eating those hours alive because the calculation never stops, and as long as the calculation runs, no hour is allowed to simply be an hour. The behavior also has a face it shows in public. You have seen it. The over-explaining of what you have been doing with your life, the slight rush in how you describe your work, the careful arrangement of your story so the timeline sounds defensible, the instinct to compress the gaps, the instinct to skip the wilderness years when you describe yourself. This is not vanity. This is the behavior of feeling late, dressed up in language so it can pass for a normal answer to the question, what have you been up to? Take that in slowly. The behavior has had a costume. The costume has fooled the people around you, but it has not fooled you. You have always known. Most people do not stay this long with words like the ones I just spoke. Most people scroll. Most people reach for something easier. You did not. You are still here, listening. That tells me something about who you are and what you are walking into tonight. This is the surface of what feeling late looks like. The screens, the math, the comparisons, the careful storytelling, the disguised exhaustion, all of it visible if you slow down enough to watch it. But beneath the behavior lives something more quiet, something the screens cannot reach, something the comparing cannot soothe. The behavior is the symptom. There is a specific feeling that drives it, and that feeling is the next thing we have to look at together, because if we only address the behavior and not the feeling underneath, the behavior will return in a different costume, and you will find yourself doing the same math through a new screen 6 months from now. Stay with me. The next layer is gentler in tone, and it lives closer to your heart. Beneath the behavior lives a feeling, and the feeling is not what most people call it. Most people call it anxiety, some call it stress, some call it pressure. Those are real, and they are present, but they are not the deepest layer. The deepest layer is grief. Specifically, you have been grieving a version of your life that you imagined would already be here by now. A version with certain things in it, certain people, a certain home, a certain freedom, a certain stability, a certain chapter that you saw when you were younger with such clarity that it almost felt like a memory of a future you had already visited. And that imagined life has not arrived on the schedule you assumed it would, and the absence of it has been quietly weighing on you for years. You have not let yourself grieve it because you have not given yourself permission. The world does not give you permission to grieve a life you did not get to live yet. There is no funeral for it. There is no ritual. There is no shoulder offered. There are no flowers sent. So, you have been grieving it alone, in the quiet, in the in-between hours, without language for what you are feeling. That is what is underneath the behavior. That is what the math has been a defense against. The math is busy because the grief is heavy, and as long as the math is running, you do not have to feel the full weight. So let me give you the permission you have not been given. You are allowed to grieve the version of your life that did not arrive when you thought it would. You are allowed to mourn the home you thought you would be living in by now, the relationship you thought you would be inside of by now, the body of work you thought you would be respected for by now, the peace you thought you would be standing in the middle of by now. You are allowed. The grieving does not mean those things are gone forever. It does not mean you are giving up on them. The grief is not a verdict on your future. The grief is the honest acknowledgement that the timeline you imagined did not match the timeline that arrived, and that is a real loss, and it deserves real honoring, and you have been carrying it for too long without honor. Take a slow breath here, just one. Let what is true be true for a moment, without rushing to fix it. There is also a second layer to the grief that I have to name, because most people miss it, and missing it keeps the grief from moving. The grief is not just for the imagined life. It is also for the version of yourself you would have been inside that life. The lighter you, the less anxious you, the less guarded you. The you who was going to laugh more, sleep deeper, trust more easily, hope without bracing. You have been grieving a person, not just a timeline. The person you thought you would have become by now. And the absence of that person has been the loneliest part of all of this, because nobody else can see who you are missing. They cannot mourn a person who has not yet existed. Only you can. This is the emotional layer of feeling late. The grief without ritual, the mourning without funeral, the loss without language. And I want you to know that this grief is not a sign that something is wrong with you. The grief is the sign that something is right with you. It is the proof that you still have hope. You do not grieve a future you no longer believe in. You only grieve the future you still believe in, the future you cannot stop believing in, the future that is still pulling at you, even when you cannot see how it would arrive anymore. So, if you are still here, listening, with this layer being named for you for the first time, you have not lost faith, you have only lost permission. And tonight, you are getting it back. Before we descend into the deepest layer of all, the layer that lives beneath both the behavior and the grief, there is something I have to honor with you. Because there is a direct connection between what your soul has been carrying and the specific kind of restoration that exists for it. And if I do not name what is real, openly, before another minute passes, the rest of this conversation cannot land properly. Truth honors truth. So, let me speak plainly. What you are about to hear, you should hear directly, without veils, without the building of mystery, for the sake of selling at the end. Some of you already know there is a tool inside this hour, and the silence around its name has begun to feel dishonest. Let me speak plainly, while we are still early. What you have been feeling, the foggy disconnection from the open, curious self you used to be, and the background pressure that keeps you reaching but not receiving, these are not one problem. They are two. Neuroscience has mapped them in two different layers. One is the dimming of a frequency that ran your childhood mind. The other is the closure of the channel through which what was promised could actually arrive in your life. Two researchers, in two different decades, in two different labs, mapped the two restorations. The first came from Dr. Robert Lake. After 34 years of research at institutions including MIT, Princeton, and Harvard, the tool he released is called the Genius Song. The second came from Dr. Stephen Newton, formerly of Stanford. The tool he released is called the Wealth Signal. Together, these two answers form what those of us who walk this path call the two-wave stack. They are not for everyone listening tonight. They are for the chosen ones, whose lateness traces back to a child within, who has been quietly dimming since age 7, and a channel quietly closing under the weight of adult survival. There is a description below this conversation, and a pinned comment, and 3 doors waiting for those who feel led. Do not click yet. Do not seek them out before your spirit confirms. We have far more to walk through together first. I am only naming what is real, so the rest of this hour stays honest. What I just shared with you is going to circle back at the right hour. Hold the names lightly. Let them rest somewhere in the back of your awareness for now. Because there is a deeper layer of this lateness, we still have to walk through together, and naming the tools without naming the deepest wound first would be an injury to the order of how restoration actually works. So let me take you down to the 3rd layer. Beneath the behavior and beneath the grief lives a 3rd layer, and I want you to soften here, because this is the layer that does not get touched by the screens, and does not get reached by the math, and does not even get reached by the morning. This is the layer where the lateness has slowly turned itself into a spiritual identity, and this is the most expensive layer of all. Here is what I mean. There is a difference between feeling late and being late. There is also a difference between being late and becoming someone who calls themselves the late one. That last move is the one that costs you the most, because it is the move where the lateness stops being something happening to you and becomes something you are. You can hear it in the way some chosen ones speak about themselves when they think no one is listening. I am the one who started too late. I am the one who missed it. I am the one who was always behind. I am the one for whom the timing did not work. I am the late bloomer. I am the one who took the long way. The one who never quite got there. Listen for those words in your own voice. Listen for them in the way you describe yourself in your head, in the privacy of your own thoughts. Because those words are not just descriptions, they are commitments. Every time you speak them, you are signing a quiet contract that says, "This is who I am, and this is who I will continue to be." That contract is the most expensive cost of feeling late, because feelings change. Behavior can be reshaped, grief can be honored and moved through. But identity is something different. Identity is the soil out of which everything else grows. And if the soil has been quietly poisoned with the words, "I am the late one," every seed you plant in it will grow up bent toward the same conclusion. And no amount of effort, hustle, hope, or strategy can outpace soil that has been contaminated at the root. I want to paint you a picture, gently, so you can see what I am describing. Imagine that you are standing at the edge of a season of your life. Not a calendar season, a soul season. A season you can feel turning, even if you cannot point to it. You are standing at the edge, looking forward, and the season ahead has a shape. It is asking something of you. It has a quality of light to it. It has a weight. It has a name your soul almost remembers, but cannot quite speak. And imagine that. Every single time you almost step into that season, a voice rises in your chest and says, "But you are too late for this." Other people stepped into this season 10 years ago. Other people are already finishing it. You missed the entrance. The doorway is not for you anymore. And so you stand at the edge. You do not step in. You watch the season unfold for other people. You tell yourself, there will be another. You tell yourself, it is fine. And you walk back to the edge of your own life, slightly more tired, slightly more confirmed, in the identity that says, I am the one who watches from the edge. Take that picture in. Hold it lightly. Let it be true for a moment, without judgment, without rushing to fix it. This is what spiritual lateness looks like. It is not a feeling, it is a posture. The posture of standing at edges, the posture of watching, The posture of waiting for the next season because you have decided the current one is no longer yours to enter. There is something I want to whisper into that posture, because it is the truth, even if it takes the rest of this conversation for it to fully land. The seasons you have been watching from the edge were not the seasons you were assigned to. The reason you could not enter them is not because you were too late. It is because they were not yours. They were the seasons of other chosen ones, on other timelines, with other formations, walking other assignments. And the season that is yours has a shape so specific and a timing so precise that nothing in the world's standard calendar could have shown you when its door was going to open. Some of those seasons of yours are still ahead. Some of them are happening right now in ways you have not yet recognized, because they do not look like the seasons you were taught to watch for. And one of them, the deepest one, is opening tonight, in the conversation you are inside of right now, even if you cannot see it yet. Long ago, there was a man whose entire life would have been read by the world as a perfect example of being late. He was 80 years old before his real assignment began. He spent the first 40 years in the wrong palace. He spent the next 40 years in a wilderness he thought was punishment. By every standard the world knows how to apply, his story should have been over by the time the door of his real life finally opened. His name was Moses, and the entire arc of his life was telling us something the world has never been comfortable repeating, which is that some assignments require 80 years of preparation, not because the person was slow, but because the assignment was that heavy. Not because the person was late, but because the door could not open until the person had been formed deeply enough to walk through it without breaking. His name will return to us at the right hour, because what happened in those 80 years has a direct map onto what is happening in your life right now. And when you can see what was being formed in him during the years he thought were wasted, you will be able to see what has been forming in you during the years you have called the same word. But before we walk into his life together, there is a deeper layer of recognition I have to take you through first, because the lateness identity does not just shape how you talk to yourself. It also blinds you to the signs of preparation that are already moving through your life right now. And those signs are real. They are specific. There are 5 of them. And every one of them, once you can see it for what it is, will undo a piece of the identity that has been pinning you to the edge. That is what opens for you next. For this moment, take a slow breath. Stay with what has been said. Let the words you have heard tonight begin to settle into the place inside you that has been waiting a very long time to hear them. I am not going anywhere. The next stretch of this walk goes deeper. Stay close. You are still here. That alone tells me something about who you are tonight. Most messages do not hold attention this long. Most messages cannot. Yours has, not because of me, but because the part of you that has been waiting for this conversation finally found it. And that part is not letting go now. So let me speak directly to that part of you for a moment. The picture I left you with, the one of standing at the edge of a soul season, watching others step in, telling yourself you are too late, that picture has been the shape of your life longer than you wanted it to be. And what we have to do now is begin to take it apart, gently, piece by piece. We are going to do that by walking through 5 specific signs, 5 recognitions, 5 marks that have been moving through your life for a long time now, that you have probably been reading as evidence of failure, when in truth, they are evidence of preparation. They are signs that what looked like delay was actually formation, that what looked like exclusion was actually protection, that what looked like wasted years were the years your real assignment required to be ready for you. These signs are not abstract. They are specific. You will recognize at least 3 of them, and many of you will recognize all 5. And when you do, something in you that has been kneeling for a long time is going to begin to stand back up. Before we walk into them, gently press the like button below. Not for me. Not because I asked. Because somewhere right now there is another chosen one walking through a night exactly like the one you have been walking through. And your simple gesture is the way this message moves through the unseen current and reaches them. They are tired. They are at the edge of their own season. They are waiting for words like the ones you have been hearing tonight. Your like sends this message into the path that finds them. That is all. We continue. The first sign is the seasons of unexplained obscurity in your life. You can look back across the years and find specific stretches, sometimes whole chapters, where it felt like the world had simply forgotten about you, where invitations stopped coming, where doors that had been opening began to close, where the spotlight, however small, that had been on you slowly turned off, and there was no specific reason you could point to. No public failure, no dramatic event, just a quiet, gradual disappearing that nobody else seemed to notice but you. You stood inside those seasons and you wondered what you had done wrong. You searched your own behavior for the misstep. You replayed conversations looking for what you must have said. You scanned your work looking for the flaw, and you found nothing because there was nothing to find. The obscurity was not punishment. The obscurity was preparation. Listen to me carefully. There is a kind of formation that can only happen in the absence of attention. There are depths that can only be developed when no one is looking. There are roots that can only grow in the dark. The seasons of unexplained obscurity in your life were not the seasons your gift was being suppressed. They were the seasons your gift was being protected from arriving before you were ready to carry it. The chosen ones who walk the long road are almost always given long stretches of obscurity early. It is the standard formation pattern, and during those stretches, the people around them are usually the ones who get the visible doors first, because their assignments are different. Their assignments do not require the depth that yours does, so their formation is shorter, and their visibility comes earlier. You watched it happen. You called it your own failure. It was never that. It was the difference between your assignment and theirs. And that was preparation, not delay. The second sign is the relationships and roles that did not work out the way you needed them to. The relationship that ended exactly when you thought it would finally settle. The job that closed exactly when you thought it would finally let you breathe. The opportunity that fell through exactly when it would have changed everything. The community that drifted away exactly when you needed it most. Each one of those losses has been an entry on the ledger of why you are late. You have looked at them and you have read them as evidence of broken timing. You have read them as proof that something is structurally wrong with the way your life has been arranged. But there is something else moving inside those losses, and you have not been allowed to see it. Each of those relationships, those roles, those opportunities, every one of them was teaching you something specific that the people around you were not being taught. They were teaching you discernment. They were teaching you how to read what is real underneath what is presented. They were teaching you how to recognize the pattern of something that looks like the right door, but is not. They were teaching you how to wait without grasping. They were teaching you how to release without bitterness. They were teaching you how to honor the goodbye, even when the goodbye wasn't your choice. These are not small lessons. These are not common lessons. These are the lessons of someone being prepared for a position that requires unusual maturity, unusual perception, unusual capacity for nuance. The peers who skip these losses also skip these formations. They are walking the lighter assignments with the lighter formations. You were given the heavier ones because the assignment ahead of you required them. And that was preparation, not delay. The third sign is more subtle. The longer your visible success has delayed, the more your hunger for meaning has grown. Watch yourself for this one. Most people, when their early ambitions do not arrive, do not become more spiritually hungry. They become numb. They settle. They lower the dial on what they expect from life, and they make peace with a smaller story. And there is no shame in that. Many people do it. It is a way to survive. But you did not do that. The longer the visible doors stayed closed, the more your inner door began to crack open. The more you read, the more you searched. The more you began to ask the questions you would not have been ready to ask if your early ambitions had paid off on schedule. The more you began to wonder if there was a deeper assignment beneath the visible one. The more you began to suspect that the calling you carry was not the one the world was set up to recognize. That hunger is not a coping mechanism. That hunger is the awakening of the deeper layer of your assignment. The chosen ones, who arrive at their real work in the late chapters, are almost always the ones whose early chapters did not satisfy them. The dissatisfaction was the system saying, there is more, and you are not allowed to settle here, because settling here would betray what you actually came to do. So, if you have grown more curious about meaning the longer success has delayed, more drawn toward depth the longer recognition has waited, more hungry for purpose the longer comfort has been withheld, that is the third sign. You were not falling behind. You were being widened. The container of your soul was being made bigger, so it could hold the weight of what was being prepared for you. And that was preparation, not delay. The fourth sign is harder to talk about, because it does not show up in your story. It shows up in your mornings. There is a specific quality to your mornings that you have probably never had language for. Not anxiety. In general, most people experience anxiety. What I am describing is more specific. It is the way you wake up before your eyes are even fully open, and there is already a low pressure pressing on you that has nothing to do with the day ahead. It is a kind of background hum that says, you are behind, you are behind, you are behind. It is so quiet you barely register it. It is so constant you have stopped noticing it. But it is there. It is there before the alarm sounds. It is there before the coffee. It is there before the day has even given you a reason to feel anything. That hum has a name. It is what some traditions have called the stress signature. It is the signature of a system that has been running in survival rhythm for so long, it cannot remember what calm felt like. And that signature has done something specific to you that you have not been told. It has closed the channel through which what is yours can actually arrive. Stay with me here. This is important. Most teachings about manifestation tell you that what you focus on, what you visualize, what you speak, those things shape what arrives in your life. And those teachings are not wrong, they are partial. What they leave out is that visualization, focus, and speech can only do their work if the receiving channel is open. And the receiving channel is the part of your nervous system that operates beneath your survival rhythm. When the survival rhythm is running constantly, when that morning hum has become your baseline, the receiving channel is closed, not damaged, not broken, just closed. Like a drawbridge that has been held up because the system below it kept signaling danger. So you have done the visualization, you have done the affirmations, you have done the gratitude lists, and the results have been thinner than the teachings promised, because the teachings did not tell you about the channel. They could not, most of them did not know about it. The fourth sign of your formation then is this: the morning pressure, the background hum, the closed channel. These are not signs that your faith is weak, that your discipline is poor, that your visualization is wrong. They are signs that there is a specific, mappable physiological condition that has been quietly closing one of your most important inheritances. And the closing of that channel was not random. It is the second half of what we walked through earlier, the same dimming that began in childhood, now grown into the adult version of itself, with a different name and a different mechanism. This is why you cannot will your way out of feeling late. The lateness is not in your effort. The lateness is in the channel, and no amount of pushing will open a channel that is held closed by the body's survival signal. You have been pushing for years. You did not fail. The push could not reach what was holding it closed. And that was preparation, not delay, because the formation of seeing this clearly is itself a piece of what was being readied in you. The fifth sign is the one most chosen ones miss, because it does not look like a sign at all. It looks like a flicker. It looks like an exception. It looks like a moment that does not belong in your normal life. It is the rare moments in your years where time has felt suspended. Think back, gently. There have been moments, not many, but real, where you were doing something simple, something not particularly important by the world's standard, and time stopped behaving the way it normally does. An afternoon walk where an hour felt like 10 minutes. A conversation with a stranger that should have been 5 minutes and was an hour, and neither of you felt the time pass. A moment in a quiet room, by yourself, where you became aware that whatever was happening inside you was happening on a different clock than the one in the kitchen. Those moments were not coincidences. Those moments were not accidents of memory. Those moments were the original time you were born inside of, briefly breaking through. They were glimpses of the way your soul was actually built to experience time before the world's clock taught you to override it. The fact that you have had those moments at all is the fifth sign. Most adults stop having them entirely. The fact that they still happen to you, even rarely, even briefly, means the original frequency has not been extinguished in you. It has only been suppressed. It is still there, underneath everything, waiting for the conditions that would let it return as a stable baseline instead of an occasional flicker. That returning is closer than you have allowed yourself to imagine, and that was preparation, not delay. If something in you has been quietly nodding through these 5 signs, type the words, "I see it," in the comments below. Not as agreement with me, as acknowledgement to yourself. The recognition matters more when it is named. The naming is part of the recovery. Speak it where you can, even if only in a single line. Pause here for a moment with me. I want you to notice that you have been listening for a while now. The next stretch of this conversation goes into a depth that most teachings do not reach, and I want you to be present for it. Whatever the room around you sounds like right now, let it sound like that. Whatever the light around you looks like right now, let it look like that. The conversation can hold steady without you tightening for it. There is nothing you have to brace for. Only listen and let the words find the place they were sent to find. Now, gently, I want to take you somewhere ancient, because there is a man whose entire life is the proof of what we have been walking through tonight. His story is one of the oldest stories the human species has kept. It has been carried across thousands of years, through every collapse and every migration, because something inside it refused to be forgotten. And the reason it refused to be forgotten is that, at the center of his story, there is a truth about timing that the world has never been comfortable repeating. His name was Moses. By the standards the world taught you, his life should have been read as the most embarrassing case of being late in recorded history. He was 80 years old before his real assignment began. He had spent the first 40 years inside the wrong identity, raised in a palace that was not his home, by a family that was not his family. He had spent the second 40 years inside the wrong job, in a desert that was not his destination, herding animals that did not belong to him, married into a family that was not the one he was originally going to lead. By every visible measurement, his story was over before it started. Imagine being him at 79. Imagine the math. 40 years lost to the wrong upbringing. 40 more years lost to the wrong career. 80 years of what looked, to him and to anyone watching, like a long, slow disqualification from anything important. He was old, he was hidden, he had a stutter. He had a temper that had cost him everything once already. He had nothing the world would have called credentials, and he had every reason to believe that whatever he had once been meant to do had passed him by long ago. I want you to picture him in his 80th year on a quiet evening, alone with the animals. The desert he is in is the same desert he has been walking for 4 decades. The horizon does not change. The work does not change. The days do not change. There is no calendar on the wall. There is no audience. There is no schedule. There is only the slow rhythm of an old shepherd doing the same simple task he has done for so long that it has become part of his body. He sits down on a stone, and he watches the light fall across the hills the way it has fallen across those hills 10,000 evenings before this one. And what he is feeling in that moment, in his chest, is not hope, it is not anticipation. It is the quiet, settled, almost peaceful weight of a man who has accepted that the part of his life that mattered is behind him, and what is left is simply the gentle continuation of what has been. He has stopped expecting, he has stopped fighting, he has stopped doing the math. And it is exactly in that hour, when he had finally laid down the calculation, when he had finally stopped measuring his life against what should have been, that the burning bush appeared. I want you to take that in slowly. The fire did not arrive in his 30s, when he was still young enough to be considered a candidate. The fire did not arrive in his 40s, when he had just been disgraced and was hungry to redeem himself. The fire did not arrive in his 50s, when he was building something. The fire did not arrive in his 60s or his 70s, when he might still have had time to make up for what he had lost. The fire arrived in his 80th year, and not because he was late, because he was finally ready. The first 40 years had to happen so he would understand the inside of the empire he was going to confront. The second 40 years had to happen so he would understand the inside of the wilderness he was going to lead a nation through. The stutter had to be there so the assignment could not be carried by his charisma. The temper had to be broken so the assignment could not be carried by his anger. The age had to be there so the assignment would obviously not be a young man's ambition. Every single thing the world would have called a disqualification was actually a qualification. Every single year the world would have called wasted was actually being used. The wilderness was not a punishment. The wilderness was the curriculum. The 40 years were not lost. The 40 years were the training that made the next 40 years even possible. And here is the part most people never let themselves take in. The assignment was that big. The assignment of leading a people through a 40-year crossing into a new land was so heavy and so dangerous and so prone to breaking the leader carrying it that no one with less than 80 years of preparation could have survived being its carrier. The slowness was not an embarrassment of the system, it was a mercy of the system. It was the only way Moses could have walked through what came next without being destroyed by it. Listen to me, slowly. Some assignments require 80 years of formation, not because the person is slow, because the assignment is that big. The world will read those 80 years as failure, because the world cannot see the size of what is being carried. Only the one carrying it can, and usually, even they cannot see it, until the bush catches fire. If you have been walking what feels like a 40-year wilderness, what feels like an 80-year preparation, what feels like a slow road that should have ended a long time ago, there is a reason. The slowness is not a verdict. The slowness is the size of the assignment. The slowness is the mercy of a system that knows what you are about to be asked to carry and is not willing to send you into it before you are ready. You are not the embarrassment of your timeline. You are its proof. You are not late for what is yours. The size of what is yours is the reason the road has been this long. There is a second figure I want to name briefly, because his story is the bookend to Moses. His name was Caleb. Caleb was 85 years old when he stood up in front of his community and asked for the mountain that had been promised to him 45 years earlier. 45 years he had waited. He had watched an entire generation come and go without claiming what was theirs. He had watched the original promises grow old in other people's mouths. And at 85 he stood up and he said, "Give me my mountain. I am as ready now as I was then. The strength I had at 40, I have at 85. Give me what was promised." And what is breathtaking about his story is the simple line he kept repeating, "I am still able. The weight has not subtracted from me. The weight has confirmed me. Give me what was held back." There is a kind of chosen one whose strength does not fade with the weight, whose readiness does not dim with the years, whose capacity for what was promised actually grows the longer the promise has been held. You may be that kind. Most people are not. Most people would have given up by now. The fact that you are still here, listening, in the late hour of your own story, looking for the door that is yours, that is the Caleb signature. That is the 85-year-old still asking for the mountain. I want to give you a word that almost no one will give you tonight. You are not late. You are formed. You are not behind. You are deep. You are not what the world thinks it sees when it looks at the surface of your timeline. You are something specific that the surface cannot read. And the longer the road has been, the bigger the thing being prepared for you to carry. If something in you receives that, if the part of you that has been kneeling for years just felt something straighten, type the word Amen in the comments below, not as religion, as reception, as the acknowledgement that what was just spoken landed somewhere inside you that has been waiting for someone to speak it. But there is something I have to tell you before we go any further, because if I leave you here with only the comfort of Moses and Caleb, I will have shown you the proof of the principle without showing you the principle itself. The proof is in their stories, but the principle is in something deeper than their stories. There is a reason why their weight did not destroy them. There is a reason why their slowness was actually preparation. There is a reason why what looked like lateness in their lives was not lateness at all. And that reason is built into the very structure of how time itself was originally set up. The world has been operating on one understanding of time, and it has been pressing that understanding onto you since the day you could read a clock. But there is a second understanding of time, an older one, a truer one, a more original one. And that second understanding has a name, and it has a structure, and it has been hidden in plain sight in the oldest texts the human race has kept. When you see what it is, the entire architecture of your lateness will begin to come apart. The math will stop making sense in the best possible way. The calculation will lose its grip, and you will begin to recognize that the clock you have been measured by your whole life was not the clock you were ever supposed to be reading. There are two clocks. There have always been two clocks. The world only ever taught you about one of them. And the other one, the older one, the truer one, the one your soul has been quietly trying to remember, is the one we walk into next. Stay close. The ground is about to shift beneath you in a way I do not want you to miss. Two clocks. There have always been two clocks, and the world only ever taught you about one of them. I want you to take a slow breath here, because what I am about to walk you into is the layer beneath everything we have already discussed tonight. The behavior, the grief, the identity, the 5 signs, the story of Moses, the story of Caleb. All of it has been pointing here to this exact place, where the ground we are standing on becomes very different from the ground most people are allowed to stand on. The reason your lateness has felt so heavy is that you have been measured by the wrong clock. Not metaphorically, literally. There is an actual second clock that exists in the structure of how time was originally understood, and the wisdom traditions that wrote the oldest texts on this planet knew about both of them. They had two different words for time, two different concepts, two different operating systems, and somewhere along the way, the modern world quietly removed one of them from the conversation and forgot it had ever been there. Listen carefully. This is the part most teachings will not give you. In the language of the very text that gave us the saying about the fullness of time, a phrase that most people read in one breath without ever pausing to ask what it actually means. There were two completely different words for time. They were not synonyms. They were not interchangeable. They described two different realities. The first word was chronos. Chronos is the clock, you know. Chronos is sequential. Chronos is the ticking. Chronos is 1 second after another second after another second. The calendar pages turning, the candles added to the cake each year. The timeline you have been measuring yourself against since the day someone first taught you to count. Chronos is what your phone shows you when you check the time. Chronos is what the airline uses to schedule your flight. Chronos is what the tax office uses to mark your filing date. Chronos is real, and Chronos is useful, and Chronos has its place. But Chronos is not the only clock there is. The second word was kairos. Kairos does not measure quantity. Kairos measures quality. Kairos is not how much time has passed. Kairos is whether the moment is ripe. Kairos is not the question of how many years are on the calendar. Kairos is the question of whether the door is ready to open. Kairos does not move forward in a straight line. Kairos arrives. Kairos appears. Kairos opens. Kairos is the time of harvest, the time of meeting, the time of fulfillment, the time of arrival. It is the time when something is finally aligned, regardless of how many minutes the chronos clock had to tick to get there. Now, hold those two words next to each other, chronos, kairos, and ask yourself a question I want you to sit with very honestly. Which clock have you been measuring your life against your whole life? You already know the answer. You have been measured by chronos. You have been told by chronos that you should be married by a certain page of the calendar. You have been told by chronos that you should be financially settled by a certain year. You have been told by chronos that the window for your dreams was supposed to close on a certain birthday. You have been told by chronos that the appropriate moment to have started, the appropriate moment to have arrived, the appropriate moment to have been seen has already passed. And every time chronos delivered that verdict, you accepted it as if it were the only verdict available, because nobody told you there was a second clock. But there is, and the second clock has been the one your soul has been operating on this entire time. The reason chronos has felt so wrong against your life is that chronos was never the clock that was reading you. Kairos was. And kairos does not register your years. Kairos registers your readiness. The same ancient text that gave us the saying about the fullness of time used the word for chronos when it talked about the duration that had to pass, but it used the word for kairos when it talked about the actual arrival of what had been promised. Two different times. Two different operating systems. The chronos was the duration. The kairos was the moment. The chronos was the wait. The kairos was the door opening. And the deeper truth is that no amount of chronos can produce kairos. You cannot rush kairos by making chronos move faster. You cannot delay kairos by making chronos slow down. They run on different mechanics entirely. Chronos is mechanical. Kairos is alive. Chronos is forward motion. Kairos is right alignment. The kairos arrives when the kairos is ready, and not before, and not after, and there is nothing in your effort, your striving, or your calculation that can advance or delay its arrival by a single breath. Take that in. Everything you have been doing, the screens, the math, the comparisons, the late-night calculations, has been an attempt to manipulate chronos in the hope that it would produce kairos faster. But chronos cannot produce kairos. It never could. Chronos is just a counter. It counts. That is all it does. It does not decide when the door opens. It does not decide when the meeting happens. It does not decide when the season turns. It does not decide when the assignment becomes ready to be carried. A different clock decides those things. A clock you have not been allowed to see. And if you were measured by chronos and judged late, the judgment was not wrong about chronos. Chronos really had ticked past the standard windows. But the judgment was completely wrong about kairos, because kairos was not late at all. Kairos was exactly on time. Kairos has always been exactly on time. The chronos calendar can call you whatever it wants. The kairos clock is unbothered. The kairos clock has been running through your life on its own rhythm, opening the doors that were ready, holding closed the doors that were not, and waiting for the moment when what is yours becomes ripe enough to arrive. That is the second clock. That is the one your soul has been running on the entire time. I want to give you a picture for the difference between the two clocks, so the distinction stops being abstract and starts being something you can feel in your body. Imagine a clock on a wall. It is round, white, plain. The hands move. Each second, a click. Each minute, a slight motion. Each hour, a chime. The clock does not care what is happening in the room. The clock does not care if the people inside it are ready. The clock does not care if the moment is right. The clock just clicks. That is chronos. Now, imagine a courtroom, a real one. There is a judge at the front. There are witnesses being prepared. There are documents being arranged. There is testimony being gathered. There is a long, careful process of readiness happening in the background before the trial can actually begin. And one day, the bailiff stands up and announces the case is ready to be heard. That announcement does not come because the clock said so. That announcement comes because the case itself is ripe. That is kairos. The clock asks, "What time is it?" The court asks, "Is the case ready?" You have been treating your life like a clock for years. Your life was never a clock. Your life is a court. And the case has been preparing in the background the entire time, while the clock on the wall kept ticking, and you kept looking at the clock and panicking, and the case kept getting ready in its own time, in its own way, on its own schedule. The reason you cannot make kairos move faster is that you are not the clock, and you are not the timekeeper. You are part of the case being prepared. The case is bigger than you can see from inside it. The case has its own readiness. And the moment the case is ready, the bailiff stands up and the door opens, and you walk through, and chronos has nothing to do with it. There is something I want to say to you now, and I want you to receive it the way it is being given, not as my voice, as something older. Hear it. I have not been counting your years against you. The years you called wasted, I called formation. The years you called late, I called preparation. The doors you watched close, I closed for you, because the rooms behind them were not the rooms I was building you for. The seasons you watched others step into, I held you back from, because their assignments were not your assignment. The voice that has been telling you that you missed your hour was never my voice. I have not been measuring you on the clock the world handed you. I have been preparing the case. And the case is closer to its hearing than you have allowed yourself to imagine. If something in you just shifted while those words were being spoken, if there was a moment where the part of you that has been carrying the lateness simply set it down for the first time in a long time, I want you to do something gentle right now. Type the words, "I release the wrong clock" in the comments below. Not because typing it makes it real, because the speaking of it, even in writing, even silently, even to no one but yourself, is the first official act of laying down a measurement system that has been bleeding you for years. Some words have to be spoken before they can leave the body. The release has to be named before it can be honored. So, if your spirit recognized what just happened, name it. I release the wrong clock. Let those 4 words pass through you tonight, and let them mean what they mean. Now, I have to tell you something that not many teachers will tell you, because it implicates a system the world is not very comfortable looking at directly. There is a reason chronos became the only clock most people have access to. The disappearance of kairos from the modern conversation was not random. It was not an accident of language. It was not just that the word stopped being used. Kairos was actively replaced, slowly, generation by generation, with chronos as the only legitimate way to measure a life. And the reason for the replacement is not difficult to see once you know to look for it. Chronos can be sold, kairos cannot. Chronos can be scheduled, kairos cannot. Chronos can be optimized, productized, monetized, made into apps, sold back to you in the form of planners and goal frameworks and timelines and milestones and quarterly reviews and 5-year plans and 10-year visions. Chronos is the perfect substrate for an economy built on selling people the management of their own time. Kairos cannot be sold to you because kairos is not a resource. Kairos is a quality of moment that you cannot purchase, schedule, optimize, or hack. Kairos arrives. You can only become someone who recognizes it when it arrives. And there is no industry built on selling that, because once you can recognize kairos, you do not need to keep buying chronos management products to soothe the anxiety of being late. So a quiet thing happened over the last several centuries. Schools were built around chronos. Workplaces were structured around chronos. Entire industries were arranged around chronos. The clocks went up on every wall. The calendars went up on every desk. The schedules tightened. The metrics multiplied. And the deeper sense of timing, the kairos sense, the readiness sense, the alignment sense, was slowly dimmed in the population, generation after generation, until most adults could not even remember they had it. But children still have it. Watch a child playing. A child does not know what time it is. A child does not check the clock. A child becomes absorbed in what they are doing, and time does what it actually does in its natural state. It expands, contracts, suspends, opens. A child lives in kairos by default. The expansion is not because the child is naive. The expansion is because the child has not yet been taught to override kairos with chronos. It is only later, around the age of 7, that the chronos training begins to take. The child is told to hurry. The child is told to keep up. The child is asked when they will finish. The child is given deadlines. The child is given grades. The child is taught that time is something that runs out, something to compete against, something to be managed. And slowly, click by click, the kairos sense is dimmed. The child learns to live by the wall clock. The child learns to count forward. The child learns to feel late. By the time you became an adult, the kairos sense in you had been almost completely overwritten. Almost. There were still those rare moments, the long afternoon walk, the conversation with the stranger, the hour in the quiet room where it broke through anyway. But those moments became the exception instead of the baseline, and the baseline became chronos. And the baseline of chronos is what you have been calling lateness. I want to say something a teacher said a long time ago that has been quoted countless times but rarely understood at the level it was meant to be understood at. He said that the kingdom belongs to those who learn to become like little children. Most people read that as a moral statement, as if it meant, be more humble, be more innocent, be more trusting. Those are not wrong, but they are not what he was actually pointing at. The deeper layer of what he was saying is that the kingdom, meaning the receiving of what was promised, operates on the time the children have not yet lost. It operates on kairos. The reason adults could not enter the kingdom on their own terms was that adults had been overwritten by chronos, and they were still trying to enter on chronos terms. The kingdom does not open on chronos. The kingdom opens on kairos, and only those who recover the child's relationship with time can recognize the door when it opens. Few people, even now, understand that he was describing a frequency, a way the brain and the soul operate before the chronos training takes them over, a specific receptive state that allows the door to be seen and walked through when it appears. That state is not gone in you. It has been dimmed, but not extinguished. The 5 signs we walked through earlier were the proof that it is still there, flickering, surfacing in the rare moments where chronos cannot quite hold its grip on you. The work in front of us, in the rest of this conversation, is the work of letting that state come back to its full strength, so that when the kairos door opens, and it is going to open, you will be able to recognize it and walk through it, and not miss the moment, because chronos was still drowning out the announcement. Take a slow breath. What just happened in this stretch of the conversation is bigger than most people will let themselves register on a first listen. The framework you have been measured by your whole life just came apart in your hands. The clock you have been judged by has been named as one of 2 clocks, and the wrong one. The voice that has been calling you late has been identified as a voice that has no jurisdiction over your actual timing. The system that produced your lateness has been seen for what it is. You did not fail. The system was rigged against the part of you that knows. Some chosen ones, when they hear this, feel a kind of grief, a quiet anger about the years they spent measuring themselves against the wrong clock. That grief is appropriate. Let it move. Do not push it away. There is something to mourn about the chronos that taught you to count yourself as behind for a long, long time. But underneath the grief is something else. There is a relief. There is a strange, slow opening in the chest where the calculation used to live. There is the beginning of a new posture. The posture of someone who has just been handed back something that was taken from them so long ago they forgot they had ever owned it. That is the kairos sense returning. You will feel it more clearly in the days ahead, especially if you do the work I am about to show you. The 5 signs we walked through were the diagnostic. The 2 clocks were the root cause. What is coming next is the path. And the path has 3 doors, not 1. There are 3 paths chosen ones walk to recover their kairos sense. I want to introduce them to you briefly now, so you know the shape of what we are about to descend into together. Then we will walk into each one in detail. The first path is the path of perception. It is a daily practice that retrains the way you read your own life. It does not change your circumstances. It changes the lens through which you read your circumstances. It is a quiet, internal practice, and it has a counterintuitive step at the heart of it that almost everyone gets wrong, because the modern mind is so committed to chronos that it cannot see the move that breaks chronos's grip. I will show you the move. It does not take long. Most chosen ones can begin it tonight, before sleep. The second path is the path of rhythm. It is a behavioral practice that breaks the chronos rhythm in your body itself. The chronos rhythm is not just a thought pattern. It has lodged itself into your nervous system. It has shaped how fast you walk, how quickly you reach for your phone, how shallowly you breathe, how rarely you allow an hour to be unproductive. The chronos rhythm has to be loosened in the body before the kairos rhythm can return as a baseline. The path of rhythm has its own counterintuitive move, which is the exact opposite of what most productivity teachings would tell you to do. I will give it to you specifically. The third path is the path of frequency. This is the deepest path, and it is the one most teachers cannot offer you, because the third path requires something that has only recently been mapped at the level of brain science. The third path is the direct restoration of the two physiological frequencies that the chronos training quietly suppressed in you over the years. These are the frequencies the children operate on before the world dims them. They have names, and they have mechanisms, and they can now be specifically reactivated through tools that did not exist a generation ago. The third path is the one that will carry the deepest change, because it does not just change how you think about time. It changes the underlying state from which your relationship with time is being generated. The first two paths I will give you tonight, fully in your own hands, and you can begin them this week. The third path is something I will introduce in its proper hour, with full transparency, with no pressure, and with the same respect you have shown by staying with me this long. But before we walk into the first path, there is something I want you to do internally. It is small, it is silent, it is a single mental act, and it will set the foundation for everything we descend into next. In the privacy of your own mind, picture the clock that has been ticking against your life. The chronos clock, the wall clock, the one with the round face and the moving hands and the steady, judging click. Picture it in front of you, hanging in the air. Now, slowly, with no urgency, picture yourself reaching up and gently lifting it off its hook, not breaking it, not throwing it away, just lifting it down, setting it on a shelf, in a corner of the room, where it can keep ticking if it wants to, but where it is no longer the thing in front of your face. And in the space where the clock used to be, picture an open window, light coming through it, air moving, no measurement on the wall, just the simple presence of an open space where the chronos used to dominate. Let that window be the new center of the room. Hold the picture for one breath. That is enough. The internal act is the act. You do not have to perform it physically. The mental gesture is the gesture. What you just did was the first move of the kairos return. The clock is still in the room, but it is no longer in command. The window is now the center. Light is now allowed to come through. The case is now allowed to prepare in its own time, without the click in the background driving you to the wrong conclusions. Stay close to me now, because everything we have done so far has been the diagnosis and the root. What comes next is the medicine. The first path opens here, and the first path is more direct and more counterintuitive than most teachings would let you suspect. Stay with me. This is where the recovery actually begins. The first path is the path of perception, and the move at the heart of it is so counterintuitive that almost everyone gets it wrong on the first try, because it goes directly against the way you have been trained to think for the last 20, 30, 40 years. Listen carefully. The standard way the modern mind tries to recover from feeling late is to count forward from where you are now, to make a plan, to set goals, to decide that even though you started behind, you can still catch up if you push hard enough, work long enough, optimize enough. That is the chronos response. That is the response of someone still inside the system, trying to fix the system using the system's own tools. And it does not work. It cannot work. The reason it cannot work is that counting forward keeps you locked into chronos as the measurement. You cannot exit chronos by counting harder inside chronos. You can only exit chronos by changing what you count from. The move of the first path is this. Instead of counting forward from where you are, count backward from 1,000 years. Take the moment in for a breath. I will say it again. because the move sounds strange the first time, and it has to land before it can work. Instead of counting forward from where you are, count backward from 1,000 years. Here is what I mean. The reason your life feels late is that you are measuring it against a window of about 80 years. 80 years is a tight container. Inside an 80-year container, every year matters enormously. A year lost feels devastating. A decade off track feels like a verdict. 40 years of preparation, like the years Moses spent in the wilderness, would feel completely impossible to justify because 40 out of 80 is half. Half of everything. Half of the only window you think you have. But that is not the actual window. That is the chronos window. The chronos window is the one your body lives inside, but the chronos window is not the window your soul has been operating on. The soul has been operating on a window so much larger that the chronos window does not even register as a meaningful unit inside it. So, I want you to do this, tonight, in the privacy of your own mind. You do not need a journal. You do not need to write anything down. You do not need to leave where you are. You are going to do this, entirely in your inner space. I want you to picture a long line, a timeline, not your 80-year timeline, 1,000-year timeline, stretching back behind you before you were born, through generations of your ancestors, through the people who walked before them, through the people who walked before them, all the way back to a moment that exists somewhere in the deep past, and stretching forward in front of you, through your children, through their children, through descendants you will never meet, through the impact of the work you do, the words you speak, the way you raise the next generation around you. That is the actual line your soul is operating on. Now place yourself on that line. Just place yourself. A single point, a single life. One brief, specific, carefully placed dot on a 1,000-year line. And ask yourself, gently, this question. From the perspective of that 1,000-year line, is anything you have done late? Hold the question. Do not answer too quickly. From the 1,000-year perspective, the year you started over at 35 is not late, it is on time. From the 1,000-year perspective, the assignment that opened at 50 is not late, it is on time. From the 1,000-year perspective, the relationship that arrived at 62 is not late, it is on time. From the 1,000-year perspective, the work you began at 78 is not late. It is the exact gift the line was waiting for. At the exact moment the line needed it. The reason your life looks late inside the 80-year frame is that the 80-year frame is too small to hold the actual scale of what your life is doing. Pull the frame out to 1,000 years, and the lateness disappears. Pull the frame out to 1,000 years, and your timing becomes perfect. Not approximately perfect, exactly perfect. Because every soul on that line is placed precisely where the line needed them, doing precisely what the line needed them to do, in the exact decade the line needed them to do it. This is the move. Stop counting forward from your peers. Start counting your placement on the long line. That is the first path of perception. That is the kairos lens. That is the practice. Here is how you walk it. The way to begin is simple. For the next 7 days, every time you notice the lateness thought arriving, every time you catch yourself doing the math of your years, every time the comparison whisper begins, every time the chronos clock starts pressing on your chest, I want you to say one short sentence inside your own mind, and I want you to say it slowly enough that you actually hear it. The sentence is this: from the 1,000-year line, I am exactly where I am supposed to be. That is it. 6 words. From the 1,000-year line, I am exactly where I am supposed to be. Whisper it inside. Let it settle. Then, return to whatever you were doing. The first day, you may say this 20 times. The second day, 15. The third day, 10. By the seventh day, you may catch the thought arriving, and the sentence will already be there before you have to summon it. That is the practice working. That is the lens being installed. That is the chronos grip beginning to loosen. There is a quiet measurement built into this. At the end of the 7 days, in a single breath of reflection, ask yourself one question. Has the morning hum gotten quieter? Has the background pressure that pressed against my chest when I woke up gotten softer, even by a small amount? Most chosen ones who walk this path honestly find that by the 7th morning, the hum is measurably softer. Not gone, softer. The first crack in the chronos baseline. That softening is your evidence that the lens is taking root. This is the first path, the path of perception. It does not change your circumstances. It changes the lens through which you read your circumstances. And the lens, once installed, begins to dissolve the lateness identity that was trapping you. But this alone is not enough. The lens is the first move. There is a second move that has to be made in your body, not just in your mind. And that is the second path. The second path is the path of rhythm, and the move at the heart of it is even more counterintuitive than the first one, because it goes against every productivity teaching you have ever absorbed. The standard response to feeling behind is to do more, work more hours, add more tasks, wake up earlier, sleep less, cut more corners, squeeze more output out of each hour. The thinking is, if I am behind, I have to push harder to catch up. That is the chronos rhythm, and it is exactly what is keeping the lateness lodged in your nervous system. Here is the move of the second path. For the next 14 days, instead of doing more, you are going to do less. Specifically, you are going to schedule 30 minutes a day of completely empty time. Time with no agenda. Time with no productivity goal. Time with no purpose. Time that is allowed to be completely useless by the standards of the chronos rhythm. The 30 minutes can happen anywhere. You can be lying down, you can be sitting in a chair, you can be standing by a window, you can be in your car after the engine is off, before you go inside. The location does not matter, the instruction is simple. For 30 minutes a day, for 14 days, you are not allowed to be productive. You are not allowed to scroll. You are not allowed to plan. You are not allowed to optimize. You are not allowed to consume content. You are not allowed to do anything that the chronos rhythm would call useful. You are required to be completely useless to chronos for 30 minutes. I know how this sounds. I know that the part of you that has been running the chronos rhythm for decades is already objecting. The objection is the proof you need to do this. The louder the objection, the deeper the rhythm has lodged itself, and the more important the practice becomes. The reason this works is that the chronos rhythm is not just a thought pattern, it is a body pattern. Your nervous system has been trained through years of pressure to interpret stillness as danger, to interpret unproductive time as falling behind, to interpret rest as failure. The chronos rhythm has rewired your physiology to refuse the very thing that would let kairos return. The 30 minutes of intentional uselessness break the rhythm. They starve the chronos pattern of the reinforcement it has been getting every day for years. The first 3 days, the 30 minutes, will feel almost unbearable. You will feel anxious. You will feel guilty. You will feel like something is going wrong. Sit through it. The discomfort is the chronos pattern dying. Let it die. By day 5 or 6, something begins to shift. The 30 minutes become tolerable. By day 8 or 9, they become quietly pleasant. By day 12 or 13, you begin to notice that you are looking forward to them. By day 14, the chronos grip on your nervous system has measurably loosened, and you will notice it in the way you walk, the way you breathe, the way you reach for your phone, the way you respond to messages, the way you sit in traffic. The whole system is running on a slightly different rhythm. The chronos pressure has stopped being the dominant signal. That is the second path, the path of rhythm, the path of starving the chronos pattern in your body until it loses its grip. These two paths together, the lens and the rhythm, will carry most chosen ones a long way. They are real, they are practical. They will produce a measurable shift in the morning hum, in the chest pressure, in the relationship with time itself. Many of you will need only these two practices to begin moving back toward the kairos baseline you were born inside of. But there is a kind of chosen one whose chronos imprint goes deeper than these two practices alone can reach. There is a kind of chosen one whose lateness was not just a thought pattern, not just a body rhythm, but something that lodged itself at the level of the underlying frequencies the brain itself runs on. For those chosen ones, the perception practice helps, the rhythm practice helps, but the deepest layer remains untouched, and the lateness keeps quietly returning, even after the surface practices have been doing their work. Before I take you into the third path, and I am going to take you into it openly, without veiling it any further, I want to tell you a story, because there is someone whose journey I have to put in front of you, so you can see what the full descent and recovery actually looks like in a real life. About 9 months ago, a woman, 49 years old, came into my awareness. She was a caretaker. She had spent the previous decade of her life caring for an aging parent, and during those 10 years, she had quietly set aside almost everything that had once been her own. The work she had wanted to do, the travel she had wanted to take, the relationships she had wanted to build, all of it had been quietly placed in storage while she gave the decade to someone she loved who needed her. Her parent passed away in the spring, and what she came into my awareness with 6 weeks after the funeral was not grief about the parent. The grief about the parent was real, but it was clean. She had loved well. She had given fully. She had no regrets about the giving. The grief that was crushing her was something else. She was 49 years old. She had what she described as 10 years of nothing on her resume. Her peers had moved into senior positions, built businesses, raised children, accumulated savings, taken sabbaticals in countries she had never seen. She felt, in her own words, like she had been disqualified from her own life. The lateness was not a feeling for her. It was a verdict. She did not believe she had a future left. She believed she had given the only viable decade of her professional prime to someone else, and what was left for her now was just to manage the slow descent into the years no one expected anything of her. She did the perception practice, the 1,000-year lens. She did the rhythm practice, the 30 minutes of intentional uselessness, and she felt them working, gently, around the edges. The morning hum got quieter. The pressure in her chest softened. The lateness identity began to crack, but she could not finish the work with those two alone. There was something deeper in her body that the practices could not reach. The decade of caretaking had wired her nervous system into a pattern of constant readiness, constant vigilance, constant low-level scanning for the next emergency. And underneath that, there was a deeper layer she could barely articulate, a sense that the part of her that had once been creative, curious, alive, awake, had quietly fallen asleep during those 10 years and could not be woken up by mental practices alone. What she did next is what I am about to walk you into. She added a third layer to her recovery, not in place of the two practices, in addition to them. And what happened in the 38 days after she added the third layer is the reason I am telling you this story tonight. By day 14, the part of her that had been asleep began stirring. Not dramatically, just stirring. She caught herself laughing at something her neighbor said. the kind of laugh that came from somewhere she had not heard from in years. By day 23, the chest pressure that had been her morning baseline for a decade was no longer there when she woke up. She sat in bed for several minutes the morning she noticed, simply taking in the quiet, because she had forgotten what that quiet sounded like. By day 31, she made a decision she had been holding back for 8 months. She reached out to a former colleague to begin exploring a return to her field. The reaching out itself felt different than the way she had imagined it. There was no urgency in it, no anxiety, no making up for lost time. There was a quiet, settled, almost playful quality to the reaching out, as if she were not catching up to anything, but simply continuing a story that had been waiting for her to come back to it. By day 38, she said something to me that I want you to hear, slowly, because it is the line that captures the entire thing. She said, "I did not catch up. I am finally on my own clock." I want you to hold that line. She did not catch up. She did not need to. The catching up was the chronos frame. What happened to her was something else. Her own clock came back online. Her kairos sense returned. Her body let go of the survival rhythm. Her child mind began stirring. Her receiving channel began to open. And from inside her own clock, the years she had given to caretaking did not look like lost years anymore. They looked like the formation that prepared her for what she was now stepping into. The 49 years did not feel late anymore. They felt right. That is what the third path made possible. Pause here with me for a moment before we descend into what the third path actually is. You have been listening for a long time now. The conversation has gone deep. The diagnosis has been laid out. The root cause has been named. 2 paths have been placed in your hands. A story has been shared. And before we step into the deepest part of the work, I want you to take in how far you have already walked tonight, because what you have already received is not small. You came in carrying a feeling of being late. You have walked through the surface behaviors of that feeling, the grief underneath it, the identity that was forming around it, the 5 signs that what you called wasted was actually preparation, the story of an 80-year-old man who became the deliverer he was always meant to be. The story of an 85-year-old man who claimed his mountain on time, and now the framework that names the wrong clock and gives you back the right one. That is a lot. Most teachings could not have given you a fraction of that in a single sitting. The fact that you have stayed for it, and that you are still here, means something specific about the kind of chosen one you are. I want to honor that, before we continue, with a single moment of quiet acknowledgement, not a ceremony, just an honest pause. You have not wasted the time you have spent here tonight. The time you have spent here tonight is some of the most useful time you have spent on yourself in years. Take that in for one breath. What we close with tonight will not be a casual ending. There is a declaration prepared specifically for you that I will speak over your life before we step out of this conversation. It is not a routine prayer. It is a sealing ceremony for the shift that has been happening inside you while we have been talking. I want you to know it is coming, so that the part of you that has been holding the new awareness can begin to settle, knowing the closing will hold what has been opened. But before we get there, the third path has to open. Listen to me carefully now, because this is where the conversation moves from teaching into something more direct. There is something I have been holding back the full shape of, and we have arrived at the hour where holding back any longer would be a disservice. The second path of the rhythm and the first path of the lens, those will carry many of you a long way. But for the deepest work, there is a layer beneath both of them that operates not at the level of your thoughts and not at the level of your behavior, but at the level of the actual frequencies your brain itself runs on. The way the chronos training quietly suppressed the kairos sense in you over the years was not just a mental shift, it was a physiological one. Two specific brain frequencies that were fully active in you as a child were slowly dimmed by the world's training, generation by generation, day by day, until they were running at a fraction of their original strength. Those frequencies have names. They have been studied, they have been mapped, and they can be specifically reactivated in the body through tools that did not exist a generation ago and that have only recently been released to the public. I want to walk you into this slowly, because what is in front of you now is the deepest piece of the recovery, and I want it placed properly into your hands. You were born as a child of light. Take that phrase in literally, not poetically. The brain you came into this world with was operating, by default, at frequencies that adults have to work very hard to access. Two of them were dominant in you when you were small. The first was the frequency of the curious mind, the frequency that lets a child learn 3 languages by the age of 5, that lets a child believe in possibility without bracing, that lets a child move through the world with the openness and wonder and untiring engagement that adults call genius when they see it in someone old enough to know better. The second was the frequency of the receiving channel, the frequency that lets a child be cared for without guilt, that lets a child receive love without earning it, that lets a child be given without bracing for the cost. Those 2 frequencies were the architecture of your child of light state, both of them. Then the world began its work. Around the age of 7, the dimming began. Schools, schedules, comparisons, criticisms, performance metrics, the slow imposition of chronos onto a kairos system that had no defenses against it. Year by year, both frequencies dimmed, the curious mind quieted, the receiving channel narrowed. By the time you were an adult, both frequencies were running at a small fraction of their original strength, and the version of you that had been born into the world had been quietly replaced with the version of you that was managed, productive, anxious, careful, and tired. The recovery of those 2 frequencies cannot be done by thought alone. It cannot be done by behavior alone. It has to be done at the level the dimming happened, which is the level of the brain's actual electrical activity. And that is what the third path does. There are 2 tools that, taken together, perform that recovery. They were developed independently by 2 different researchers, in 2 different decades, in 2 different research traditions. Neither of them set out to build a tool that would be paired with the other. They each built a tool that addressed exactly one of the 2 frequencies. And it was only later, when people who had used both began noticing the compounding effect, that the pairing was named. I want to walk you through both, slowly, with full transparency, with no pressure. Listen. The first tool addresses the dimming of the curious mind, the frequency that fell silent in you slowly after the age of 7. It is called the Genius Song. The Genius Song is a digital audio track of about 7 minutes in length. It is listened to through stereo headphones. It uses a method called brain entrainment, which delivers slightly different audio signals into the left ear and the right ear, and the difference between those 2 signals is what the brain locks onto and begins to mirror at the level of its own frequency. The technology has been studied for decades. The Genius Song specifically targets the gamma range, which is the range of the curious mind, the range your child brain ran on by default before the world dimmed it. The man who developed the Genius Song is Dr. Robert Lake. He spent 34 years as a research neuroscientist before releasing it. The research foundation behind the technology comes out of work done at MIT, Princeton, Harvard, and several other leading research institutions. He is not a guru. He is not a marketer. He is a scientist who, late in his career, decided that the work he had been doing inside laboratories was too important to leave inside laboratories. And he packaged the technology in a form that ordinary people could use at home in 7 minutes a day without any prior training or specialized equipment. What the Genius Song does, in the simplest terms, is reverse the dimming, the first wave of the recovery, the reawakening of the curious mind, the return of the child within. Not the return of immaturity, the return of the part of you that learned without effort, that wondered without bracing, that engaged with the world the way a child engages with a new room. Most chosen ones who use it begin to notice, in the first 2 to 3 weeks, a quiet return of curiosity, a quiet return of openness, a quiet return of the capacity to be interested in things again. The fog that has been sitting behind your eyes for a long time begins to thin. The sleep begins to deepen. The interest in your own life begins to come back. There is also a deeper extension of this work that some chosen ones who walk this path further encounter. The strongest, most amplified version of what the Genius Song begins. Many of those who go further down this road find themselves crossing paths with that extension after they have secured the original tool. I will not describe it in detail tonight, because that is not the place to introduce it. I only mention it so you know it exists, and so that if your spirit confirms when you encounter it, you will recognize what it is. If your spirit does not confirm, the original is enough. The original is complete. That is the first wave. Listen. Decades of research at MIT, Princeton, and Harvard documented something remarkable about the brains of children that almost no one outside the laboratories fully understood. The gamma range is not just associated with intelligence. It is the underlying frequency of the entire state we have been calling chronos in this conversation. It is the frequency on which time perception itself is generated. When the gamma range is active and strong, time behaves the way it behaves for children. When the gamma range is dimmed, time begins to behave the way Chronos describes: sequential, pressing, finite. The dimming of the gamma range is, at the deepest level, exactly what installed the lateness imprint in the first place, and the reactivation of the gamma range is the physiological basis of what we have been describing as the return of the kairos sense. That is what the Genius Song addresses: the first wave, the dimmed frequency under the lateness. But there is a problem you need to know about. The first wave alone is not enough. I want to walk you through this carefully because it is the pivot at the heart of what is being placed in your hands tonight, and I do not want it to land flat. Pause with me for a moment. When the curious mind comes back online, when the gamma frequency begins to be reactivated, something becomes visible that was not visible before. The child within you wakes up. She begins to look around. She begins to feel her capacity for wonder, her capacity for openness, her capacity to be interested in her own life again. And then she begins to reach. She begins to want what is hers. She begins to lift her hands toward the things she came here to do, the things she came here to receive, the things she came here to be given. And what most chosen ones discover in that moment is something that almost nobody has prepared them for. The child has woken up, but the channel through which what is hers can actually arrive in her life is still closed. She is reaching, but she is not receiving. She is awake, but the doorway between her and what was promised is shut. There is a different frequency that governs that doorway. It is not gamma, it is alpha. And the alpha frequency, which was also fully active in you as a child, has been suppressed by something different from the chronos training. It has been suppressed by what researchers now call the stress signal, the constant low-level survival rhythm that adult life has wired into your nervous system over the years. When the stress signal is dominant, the alpha frequency cannot run at its proper strength. And when alpha cannot run at its proper strength, the receiving channel stays closed. You can wake the child within. You can do all the work of the gamma reactivation. And if the alpha channel is still held shut by the stress signal, the child wakes up into a house where the front door is locked from the inside, and the things that were promised to her cannot make their way to her, no matter how clearly she is reaching. This is why the curious mind alone is not enough. This is why a second wave is necessary. The second tool addresses the closure of the receiving channel. It was developed by a different researcher in a different lab, in a different decade. His name is Dr. Stephen Newton. He was a Stanford-trained neuroscientist who broke from his institutional path because he became convinced that the work he wanted to do could not be done inside the standard academic framework. He spent years mapping the relationship between the stress signal and the alpha frequency. The research foundation behind his work draws on Stanford, Boston University, and other leading research institutions, on a separate research lineage from Dr. Lake's. They are not colleagues. They did not collaborate. They are two independent researchers in two different traditions who arrived at convergent conclusions about a problem the human nervous system has been carrying for a long time. The tool he developed is called the wealth signal. It is a 5-minute digital audio track, also listened to through stereo headphones. It does something specific. It uses a calibrated audio signal to deactivate the stress signal, which lets the alpha frequency rise back to its natural strength. And paired with the audio is a short verbal practice, 9 words, in a specific sequence that you repeat silently while the audio plays. The 9-word sequence is drawn from a contemplative tradition that goes back roughly 3,300 years. And it works at the level of the deeper part of the brain that the stress signal has been overriding. The combination of the audio and the 9 words bypasses the resistance that has been holding the receiving channel closed. What the wealth signal does, in the simplest terms, is open the channel, the second wave of the recovery, the doorway through which what is yours can finally begin to arrive. After the curious mind has been woken, after the child within has come back online, the wealth signal completes what the genius song begins. There is a deeper extension of this tool as well, that some chosen ones who walk this path further come into contact with after they have secured the original. It amplifies the receiving channel many times faster than the original alone. Many chosen ones, already on this path, encounter it after they have begun the work. I will not describe it in detail tonight, for the same reason I did not describe the first one in detail. I only name it so that if your spirit confirms when you encounter it, you will know what it is. If your spirit does not confirm, the original is enough. The original is complete. There is also a path some of the chosen ones who go furthest tend to walk. It is the combination of both extensions taken together. It is not for everyone. The originals alone are complete. The combination is for those whose path requires going deeper than the originals can carry alone. I am only mentioning it because some of you will encounter it later, and I want you to recognize what it is when it appears. The originals are the foundation. The deeper combination is for the rare path. The originals are enough for the vast majority. That is the second wave. The reason these two tools are usually paired together is what we have been walking through this entire conversation. The dimming was not one problem, it was two. The curious mind dimmed first, the receiving channel closed second, and the recovery has to walk in the same order. Wake the child first, open the receiving channel second. The order matters. There is an old teaching that captures it more clearly than any modern framework I have encountered. Become like little children, then receive what was promised. That is the entire structure. Become first, receive second. The wave that wakes the child is the first wave. The wave that opens the receiving channel is the second wave. Together, they form what those of us who walk this path have come to call the two-wave restoration, or simply the two-wave stack. It is the deepest layer of the third path. About a year ago, a man, 48 years old, came across both of these tools at the same time. He was a sales manager in Phoenix. He had spent the previous 5 years working 60-hour weeks after a promotion that had been the financial breakthrough he had wanted his whole career. The promotion paid him well. He was no longer behind by any external measurement. But every evening, when he came home, he described himself as having about 5% battery left. His wife told him, gently and repeatedly, that he was not really there in the evenings anymore. He had heard her. He had not known how to fix it. 11 days after he began using the wealth signal in the morning, he made a phone call to his manager that he had been avoiding for 2 years. He renegotiated the boundaries of his role. He did not lose any standing in the negotiation. The numbers did not go down. What changed was that the call came from a different part of him than the part that had been afraid to make it. He went into the conversation from the alpha state, not from the stress signal. The receiving channel was beginning to open. He could ask for what he needed without bracing. He could state what was true without urgency. The first weekend after that call, he went 48 hours without checking work email for the first time in 4 years. The change was not about money. The change was about presence. The change was about being able to actually be inside his own life again. I am telling you this story because it is the texture of what the second wave does. It is rarely dramatic. It is almost always quiet. It is the small return of the things you stopped letting yourself ask for. The boundaries you had not been able to draw. The pricing you had not been able to charge. The peace that had not been able to settle in the morning. The presence that had not been able to land in the evening. These are the textures of an opened receiving channel. These are the textures of the alpha frequency coming back online. I want to address some of the things that may be moving inside you as you listen, because I have been doing this work long enough to know what tends to surface when this part of the conversation lands. If something inside you is saying, I have tried so many things, I have tried so many practices, I have tried so many books and so many courses, this is going to be just another one of those. I want to honor that voice because it has earned its caution. The previous attempts may have done something for you, or they may not have. Most of them addressed the surface. Most of them tried to change the thoughts without changing the underlying frequency that was generating the thoughts. That is the layer most teachings cannot reach, because most teachings are built around concept, not physiology. What is in front of you now is a different category of intervention. The mechanism is not concept. The mechanism is the actual brain frequency. That is the layer the surface practices could not reach. That is why the previous attempts felt thin. The thinness was real. It was not your fault. If something inside you is saying, this sounds too simple, audio cannot really do what is being claimed, real change has to be hard. I want to gently say that the hardness you have been taught to associate with real change is a chronos belief. Chronos says that what is valuable must be earned through suffering, struggle, sustained effort. Kairos says that what is yours arrives when the readiness aligns. The simplicity of the tools is not a sign that they are weak. The simplicity of the tools is a sign that they are matched to the way the underlying system actually works. The brain's frequencies do not respond to harder effort. They respond to the right signal at the right time. That is what these tools deliver. If something inside you is saying, I cannot afford anything additional right now, I am stretched thin already, I want to say that this is the most important objection of all, and I want to honor it directly. There is no version of this conversation in which I want you to add financial pressure to a life that is already pressured. If now is not the moment for the third path, the first two paths are still yours. The lens, the rhythm, they are real. They will carry you. Walk them and let the third path arrive when it arrives. The Kairos clock that we have been recovering tonight is not in any hurry. It will hold the door for you for as long as it takes. There is no rush built into this. Take what is right for tonight and leave the rest for whenever the Kairos arrives. And if something inside you is saying, why are there two products? This feels like an upsell. I am suspicious of why one tool is not enough. I want to address that one directly because it is the most reasonable objection a thinking person could raise, and you deserve a real answer to it. The reason there are two tools is not commercial. The reason there are two tools is that there are two specific things that were dimmed in you, and a single tool that addresses one of them does not address the other. If the two-wave restoration could be done with a single audio, there would be a single audio. It cannot be done that way. The dimming of the curious mind is one mechanism in one frequency range addressed by one set of audio signals. The closure of the receiving channel is a different mechanism in a different frequency range addressed by a different set of audio signals. To restore one and leave the other untouched is to do half the work and leave you in a half-restored state, which is its own form of frustration. The two tools are paired because the two-wave problem is paired. The reason you might recognize yourself in both deficiencies, the dimmed mind and the closed channel, is that most chosen ones have both. The pairing is the matching of the answer to the actual shape of the problem. There are three doors, and I want to describe each of them now, with the same transparency I have been giving you all night. The first door is for the chosen ones who recognize themselves in the first wave specifically, the dimmed, curious mind, the fog behind the eyes, the disconnection from the child within, the loss of the openness, the wonder, the engagement that the world dimmed years ago. For these chosen ones, the genius song alone is enough. It is the honored entry point. It is the first wave restoration. Some of you are going to walk through that door, and that is enough. The child within you needs to wake up, and once she does, the rest of the journey will reveal itself. There is no smaller about this door. It is the foundation many chosen ones need to begin with, and it is complete. The second door is for a smaller, rarer kind of chosen one. These are the ones who already have an active spiritual practice, whose curious mind is already functioning, whose child within is alive and present. What they are missing is not the gamma. What they are missing is the alpha, the receiving channel, the doorway through which what is theirs can actually arrive. For them, the wealth signal alone may be enough. This is a rare path. Most chosen ones do not fit it. But for the few who do, this door is honored, and it is the right entry point. The third door, which is the one most chosen ones who walk this path end up choosing, is the door of complete restoration. Both tools together, both waves together. The genius song to wake the curious mind, followed by the wealth signal to open the receiving channel. The full two-wave stack. This is the path that addresses both halves of the dimming, in the order they were originally dimmed, in the order they need to be restored. The reason most chosen ones choose this door is that most chosen ones have both deficiencies. The reason this door is described as the recommended path is that the two waves compound, they do not simply add together. The child within wakes, then the receiving channel opens, and the openness of the channel and the awakeness of the child reinforce each other in a way that neither could produce alone. This is the path that completes what we have been describing all night. Become like little children. Then receive what was promised. I want to say plainly that there is no pricing pressure built into how I am describing these. Whichever path you walk, is honored. The third path is the recommended one because it is the complete one, but the first and second are real, and they are not lesser. The chosen ones who choose the first door are not buying the basics. They are entering at the layer they actually need. The chosen ones who choose the third door are not buying more. They are matching the answer to the full shape of their need. Each of the three is the right path for the chosen one. It is the right path for. Your spirit will know which. I want to gently name one more thing before we close out the practical layer. Each day that the wrong clock continues to run unchallenged in your nervous system is a day in which the dimming continues. The chronos pressure does not pause while you decide. It keeps pressing. The morning hum keeps repeating its message. The receiving channel stays closed for one more day. The child within stays asleep for one more day. There is a kindness in being honest about this, because the world will not be honest about it. The world will let you postpone forever, because the postponement serves the systems that were built around chronos. I am not asking you to rush. I am asking you to be honest about what continued postponement actually costs. The cost is not money. The cost is days of the dimming continuing. That is the only urgency I am willing to name, and I am naming it because it is true. There is one more thing I have to tell you, because the work you are receiving tonight has people who will try to imitate it, and I want to protect you from confusion. These tools are not available on streaming platforms. You will not find the Genius song on a music streaming service. You will not find the wealth signal on a music streaming service. There are imitations being put together by people who have read about brain entrainment and have tried to build something similar. They do not work. The mechanism is specific. The calibration is specific. The research lineage that produced both tools cannot be replicated by someone who has merely heard about the concept. Both tools are only available through the doors I am pointing you toward in this conversation. The descriptions and the pinned comment below contain the three doors, and nothing else here is the same thing. I am only naming this because I have seen chosen ones spend money on imitations and walk away believing the entire technology does not work, when what did not work was the imitation. The originals are real. Look for the names, the Genius song, the wealth signal, from the doors below this conversation, not from elsewhere. I want you to be still for a moment now. The decision in front of you is not really a decision about pricing. The decision in front of you is which path is yours. So, here is what I want you to do, just for a few breaths. Inside, where no one else can see, place your hand on your chest, gently, if you can, and if you cannot, simply close your eyes for a moment and let the inside of your own body become the room. Ask yourself one quiet question. Not what should I choose, not what is the right answer, just this. Which of the three doors does my spirit recognize? Some of you, the answer is already there. It has been there since I described the third door. Some of you, the answer is the first. Some of you, the answer is the second. All three are honored. None of them is wrong. The spirit knows which one is yours. Whichever one it is, the door is below this conversation. In the description, in the pinned comment, there are three doors there. You will see them. Step into the one that calls you. There is a 90-day window in which you can change your mind on any of the three doors. If the first wave does not move you the way it has moved the others, if the second wave does not open the way it has opened for the others, if the third path does not carry you the way it has carried the others, you can return any of them, keep all of the additional materials that come with them, and walk away with the Kairos lens and the rhythm practice and your dignity intact. There is no penalty built into this. There is no pressure built into this. There is only the matching of the right tool to the right chosen one. The doors are below, 3 of them: restoration, reception, the complete restoration. Your spirit knows which one. Step into the door that calls you, only if your spirit confirms. If your spirit does not confirm, the lens and the rhythm are still yours, and they are real, and they are enough for tonight. Now let what was named begin to settle into the place inside you that was prepared to receive it. We are very close to the close. There is one more layer to walk through together, and then there is the ceiling prepared specifically for you. Stay close. Stay with me a little longer. There is still ground to cover, and the most important ceiling of the entire conversation is still ahead. I want to take you through what the days ahead will actually look like, so that the work we have walked through tonight does not stay theoretical. The lens we recovered, the rhythm we named, the deeper restoration that opens for those who walk it, all of these are going to live or die based on what you do in the 7 days that follow this hour. So let me give you a clean shape to walk into. The first 7 days are simple. The lens, the 1,000-year line, the 6-word sentence whispered inside whenever the lateness thought arrives. From the 1,000-year line, I am exactly where I am supposed to be. That is the whole assignment for the first week. You do not need to add anything to it. You do not need to optimize it. You do not need to track it on an app. You simply walk through your week, and every time the chronos pressure presses against your chest, you whisper the sentence, and you let it land, and you continue. By the 7th morning, the morning hum will be measurably softer. That is the first benchmark. Notice it when it arrives. The second week brings in the rhythm, the 30 minutes a day of intentional uselessness. You do not have to wait until day 8 to begin. Some of you will want to start the rhythm work alongside the lens work from day 1. That is fine. Some of you will want to let the lens settle first before adding the rhythm. That is also fine. Listen for what your own pace asks of you. The rhythm work runs for 14 days, and the discomfort of the first 3 days is part of how the chronos pattern dies. By day 12 or 13, the 30 minutes will become quietly pleasant. That is the second benchmark. For those of you whose spirit confirmed one of the 3 doors below the deeper restoration, the timeline overlaps with the practices, not replaces them. The lens and the rhythm continue. The deeper layer begins working underneath them. In the first week of the deeper work, most chosen ones notice the fog behind their eyes beginning to thin and the sleep beginning to deepen. By the 3rd week, the morning chest pressure that has been your baseline for a long time is no longer the first thing you wake up to. By the 6th week, both the curious mind and the receiving channel are working together, and the small returns begin the laughter that comes from somewhere you have not heard from in years, the boundary you finally name, the price you finally ask for, the conversation you finally start. None of this is dramatic. All of it is real. The texture of restoration is rarely loud. Past the 6th week, you settle into a new baseline. 3 or 4 sessions a week becomes maintenance. The Kairos lens stops being a practice you do and becomes a way you see. The rhythm work no longer needs the formal 30 minutes because your nervous system has stopped requiring the override. You are simply living inside a different relationship with time, and the lateness identity that ruled your life for so long becomes something you remember. The way you remember an old illness, present in your history, but no longer present in your body. That is the shape of what is in front of you. I want to address some of the things that may go differently than I have just described, because honesty is part of how this work holds. If, by the end of the first 7 days, the morning hum has not measurably softened, if the lateness pressure feels exactly the same as it felt when you began, that is not a sign the practice failed. That is a sign that the chronos pattern is more deeply lodged in you than the lens alone can reach in 1 week. You do not abandon the practice. You add the rhythm work earlier than you might have. The two practices together loosen the pattern in a way that the lens alone cannot. Many chosen ones need both running in parallel before the first softening arrives. Give it the second week with both running and notice what happens. If, after the second week, the chronos mind keeps reasserting itself, if the calculation comes back, if the comparison whispers return, if you find yourself doing the math in the late hours again, that is not a regression. That is the pattern doing what well-rooted patterns do. They surface in waves. The first wave passes. A second wave arrives a few weeks later. A third wave a few weeks after that. Each wave is smaller. Each wave passes more quickly. Reapply the lens when the wave comes. Rewalk the rhythm if the wave is strong. The pattern does not die in a single defeat. It dies through repeated, patient confrontation until it stops surfacing because there is no longer anything in your nervous system feeding it. If, after several weeks of all 3 layers running, your external circumstances have not yet changed, if the relationships have not yet shifted, if the work has not yet opened, if the financial picture has not yet moved, that is not a failure of the work. That is the order in which kairos restoration unfolds. The internal clock comes back online first. The external timing follows. There is a delay between the recovery of the kairos sense inside you and the visible rearrangement of what is around you. The internal recalibration has to be stable before the external doors can open without breaking what is being delivered through them. Hold steady. The external follows the internal. It always has. It always will. The chronos urgency that wants the external to move first is the very pattern we have been releasing all night. Let the order be the order. There are more conversations being prepared for what you are walking into, the work in front of you. Over the next several months, the lens deepening, the rhythm settling, the deeper restoration unfolding. For those who walk it, that work is not something you have to do alone. There will be more nights like this one, more conversations specifically for the chosen ones who walk this kind of road. If you want to be reachable when the next one is ready, stay close. The simple gesture of staying close to this voice is enough. You will hear when the next one opens. I want to do one more thing before we move into the closing. I want to put plainly, in the simplest possible language, what we have walked through together tonight, so that the part of you that came here for clarity walks away with the clarity, and the part of you that came here looking for something specific to take home walks away with something specific to take home. We named that the lateness you have been feeling is real, but it is pointing the opposite direction from what you assumed. It is not telling you that you missed your hour. It is telling you that something specific in you was being prepared, and the preparation has now reached a stage where it can begin to be released. We named the diagnosis in 3 layers. The behavior of feeling late, expressed in screens and calculations, and midnight math. The grief beneath the behavior for the version of life and the version of yourself that did not arrive on the schedule you assumed. The identity that was forming around the lateness, that was beginning to call itself the late one, the missed one, the one who took the long way. We named the 5 signs that what looked like delay was actually formation, the unexplained obscurity, the losses that taught discernment, the hunger for meaning that grew with the weight, the morning pressure with no name, the flickers of suspended time that proved the original frequency was still alive in you. We named the wisdom of 2 figures whose entire lives were the proof of the principle. Moses, 80 years old at the burning bush. Caleb, 85 years old, asking for his mountain. Their weight did not subtract from them. Their weight confirmed them. We named the root cause of the lateness imprint, the 2 clocks. chronos, the wall clock, the sequential ticker, the system the modern world raised you inside, kairos, the courtroom of right timing, the system your soul was actually born inside. The reason your life felt late is that you were measured by the wrong clock for as long as you can remember. The voice calling you late had no jurisdiction over your real timing. We named the 3 paths chosen ones walk to recover their kairos sense, the lens of perception with the move of counting backward from 1,000 years. The rhythm of the body with the move of 30 minutes of intentional uselessness for 14 days. The deeper layer of frequency restoration with the 2 waves that wake the curious mind first and open the receiving channel second. That is the shape of what was given to you tonight. That is what you walk out of this conversation carrying. Now we close. I want you to settle, gently, wherever you are. You do not need to move from where you are sitting or lying. You do not need to find a different place. The place you are in is fine. The light around you is fine. The room you are in is fine. The closing happens here, in this exact place, in this exact hour, while you are exactly as you are. I want you to do one thing in your inner space before we begin the sealing. I want you to stand, in your mind, at the edge of a wilderness, not a wilderness of punishment, a wilderness of preparation. The wilderness Moses walked. The wilderness Caleb walked. The wilderness you have been walking, year by year, in your own way, without language for what was happening to you. Picture yourself standing at the edge of that wilderness now, facing forward. The years behind you are the years you have already walked. The horizon in front of you is the years still to be walked. And in the middle distance, ahead of you, picture a small fire on the ground, a bush burning. Not a metaphor, a concrete picture. A small fire on the dry ground, ahead of you in the distance. That fire is your burning bush. It does not care how old you are. It does not care what year you stopped expecting. It does not care about the calendar that has been judging you. The fire is for you. It has been there longer than you knew. It has been waiting for the hour when you would walk close enough to see it. Take a slow breath and let yourself walk toward it, in your mind, without urgency. Step by step, the ground beneath your feet is solid, the horizon is wide, the fire is steady. There is no need to rush. The fire will not move while you approach. When you arrive at the fire, do not speak yet. Just stand close to it. Feel the heat of it on your face. Feel the light of it in your eyes. Feel the way the air around it is alive with something the rest of the wilderness does not contain. This is the commissioning. This is the moment in your life that the world's calendar said had already passed. This is the hour the chronos mind told you would never arrive. The fire does not believe the chronos. The fire is here. The fire is for you. The fire has your name carved into the air around it. Stay there for one slow breath. Let the picture be real for as long as it needs to be real. Now I am going to walk you through the closing in 4 movements. We release, we declare, we activate, and we seal. Each movement will land in its own time. Stay where you are. Stay close. The first movement is release. You have been carrying things that were never yours to carry. They were handed to you by people who did not understand the assignment you came here to walk. They were inherited from a culture that does not know how to read souls. They were absorbed from a system that benefits from your believing that you are late. And tonight, in the privacy of your own being, in the quiet of this hour, those things are being laid down. I release the wrong clock. The chronos that has been measuring me against a window that was never my window. The calendar that has been counting against me year after year, with the standards of people who did not know my hour. I lay it down. I release the comparison. The reflex of measuring my life against the lives of others, of doing the math of what they have that I do not, of standing at the edges of their seasons and reading my own life through their timeline. I lay it down. I release the math. The midnight calculations of years subtracted, of opportunities counted, of futures projected, of hopes audited. I lay it down. I release the identity of the late one, the voice inside me that has called myself the missed one, the behind one, the one who took the long way. That voice is not my voice. That name is not my name. I lay it down. I release the years I called wasted. They were not wasted. They were the formation. They were the curriculum. They were the wilderness Moses walked, and the obscurity Caleb walked, and the long road. Every chosen one who carries something heavy is required to walk before the door can open. I honor those years now, instead of resenting them. I lay the resentment down. I release the grief that has been carried without ritual. The mourning for the imagined life, the mourning for the imagined version of myself. I do not abandon the longing for what is still ahead. I only release the weight of grieving alone, in silence, without permission. The grief has been honored tonight. It can rest now. If something inside you wants to type the words, "I release the wrong clock," once more in the comments below, do it now. Some words have to be spoken twice before they leave the body. The first time was earlier in this conversation. The second time is now, as part of the sealing. Speak it where you can, even silently, even only inside. Take a breath. The release is real. The release is honored. The second movement is declaration. What is laid down has to be replaced with what is true. Otherwise, the release is incomplete. So, I am going to speak over you now what your soul has been waiting to hear, named for a long time. I am going to speak it in a way that is meant to be received, not analyzed. Let it land. You do not have to verify it. You do not have to justify it. You only have to receive it. You are not late. You are formed. You are not behind. You are deep. You are not the embarrassment of your timeline. You are its proof. You are not the one who missed the hour. You are the one whose hour has been guarded. You are the late-coming chosen, kept by hands stronger than your own. You are the long-prepared, walking in the kairos that the world cannot read. You are the inheritor of restoration, the daughter or the son of the line that has been quietly forming you across years that looked like nothing from the outside. You are the child within whose curious mind is being woken. You are the receiving channel that is being opened. You are the burning bush that has been lit for you in the wilderness of your own years. In the exact hour, the case became ready to be heard. That is who you are. That is who you have always been. The chronos clock did not have the authority to name you anything else. It tried. It failed. The naming has been returned to its proper source tonight. And now I want to speak something that comes from a place older than this voice, in the way it has come to me before, when the closing was the right hour for it to come through. I am going to let it come through cleanly, the way it has always come through cleanly when it was the right hour. Hear it. You did not arrive late. I have been holding your hour. The years you called wasted, I called preparation. The doors that closed, I closed for you. The doors still ahead of you, I am opening at their proper time. You have not missed what is yours. What is yours has been kept by me, and the keeping is over now. The hour you have been waiting for has begun. The third movement is activation. The release happens in the laying down. The declaration happens in the speaking. The activation happens now, in the silent agreement between you and the truth that has just been spoken over your life. I am going to ask you to do one thing inside while we are still in this closing, before we move to the sealing. In the privacy of your own being, in this exact moment, I want you to silently agree. Agreement is the activation. Agreement is the doorway. Without your agreement, the words I have just spoken remain words. With your agreement, they become the architecture of how you walk forward from this night. You do not have to say anything out loud. You do not have to write anything. You only have to let one quiet inner movement happen. The movement of saying yes to what has just been named over you. Yes, I am formed. Yes, I am deep. Yes, I am the late-coming chosen, kept by hands stronger than my own. Yes, my hour has begun. Let the yes happen inside. And now, if your spirit will receive it, I want you to type one more thing in the comments below, because this is the deepest comment of the entire night, and I have been holding it for the right hour. Type the words, I am in Kairos. Say it inside before you type it. Say it with the force of someone who has spent decades being told they were late and is finally standing inside the truth that they were not. Say it with the steadiness of someone who knows the chronos clock no longer has jurisdiction over their life. Say it once, slowly, inside, and then type it where the others can read it. I am in Kairos. This is the only time tonight I am asking you to type something with that level of weight behind it. If your spirit recognizes it, do it now. And, as you do, what is happening underneath the words is the actual sealing of the activation. The Kairos sense that has been suppressed in you for years is being given permission to come back as a baseline. The receiving channel that has been held closed by the survival rhythm is being given permission to begin opening. The child within, who has been quiet for so long, is being given permission to wake. All of this is happening in the unseen layers, beneath what you can see and beneath what you can prove. The proof will come in the days ahead. The sealing is now. Take a slow breath. Let the agreement settle into the part of you that has been waiting decades for it. The fourth movement is sealing. I want you to be still, here. Do not move. Do not check anything. Do not reach for anything. Just be where you are, with what has been spoken, for one full breath of silence. The work is done. What was named has been named. What was released has been released. What was declared has been declared. What was activated has been activated. The sealing is complete. The hour is yours. You walked into this conversation carrying a feeling that you were already very late. You are walking out of this conversation carrying something different. You are walking out carrying the lens that lets you see your life through the Kairos clock. You are walking out carrying the rhythm that lets your body release the chronos pressure. You are walking out carrying the recognition of who you have actually been all along. Not the missed one, but the kept one. Not the late one, but the formed one. Not the embarrassment of your timeline, but its proof. The next chapter of your life will not arrive on the calendar the world wanted you to read. It will arrive on the Kairos clock that has always been your real clock. And from inside that clock, the years you have walked will not look like what they used to look like. They will look like what they actually are. They will look like the long, careful, deliberate, beautiful preparation that was required for the size of what you came here to do. I want to leave you with one more layer of acknowledgement before this closes. If this conversation brought clarity to confusion that had been sitting in your chest for years, if it brought a kind of peace to the panic that had been your morning baseline, if it brought language for the ache that you could never quite name, if it brought a sense, even small, that the years you have been walking were never wasted, let your simple press of the like button below be your Amen without words. Not because I asked, because the gesture closes a circuit that the conversation has been moving through, and the closure is part of how the energy of what was given returns to where it needs to return. There are more nights like this prepared for those who walk this road. Stay close to this voice. The next conversation is already being formed. You will know when it is ready. There is someone in your life right now who needs the words you just received. I want to ask you, gently, to pause for one moment and let your mind reach for them. Someone who has been silent about their dreams lately in a way that is unusual for them. Someone who has been mentioning, in passing comments here and there, what they thought they should have done by now. Someone who carries a quiet ache about the years they think they wasted, even though they would never say those words out loud. Someone who looks fine on the outside, who shows up for their life, who takes care of the people around them, but you know, because you know them, that something behind their eyes has been quietly counting losses for a long time. Send this to them. Text it, email it, drop it into a message however you usually reach them. Do not make a long explanation, just send it and let it land where it needs to land. Because the words they are carrying alone tonight are exactly the words this conversation was made to address, and your one act of sending could be the moment that breaks open something for them that they have not been able to break open by themselves. The work tonight has been for you. The next layer of the work is what passes through you to someone else who is waiting in their own night for someone to send them a message like this one. If your spirit is still calling you toward the deeper restoration that was named earlier in this conversation, if the names of the two tools have not left you, if the description of the 3 doors is still moving in you, the doors are exactly where I told you they would be. In the description of this conversation, in the pinned comment, 3 doors, side by side. Step through the one your spirit confirms. Only the one your spirit confirms. The chronos that has been recovered tonight will hold the door for as long as your spirit needs to be sure. If your spirit does not confirm tonight, the lens and the rhythm are still yours. They are real. They will carry you. The deeper restoration will wait for the hour it is meant to arrive in your life. Nothing about what was given to you tonight depends on a transaction. The whole of what was given freely. The deeper layer is for those it is for, when it is for them. Now, I am going to leave you with the silence. The closing is not a series of words to be wrapped up. The closing is a quality of presence to be settled into. Stay where you are. Let the room be quiet. Let your breath be slow. Let what has been spoken settle into the deepest part of you that has been waiting decades to receive it. What was hidden has been named. What was late has been honored. What is yours is becoming visible. And one last thing, before the silence finishes its work. The reason this conversation reached you tonight, the reason the pull was so insistent, the reason you stayed when so many would have moved on, the reason none of the other distractions of your day succeeded in pulling you away was not random. The hour was prepared. The voice was sent. The hand that drew you here is the same hand that has been keeping your real timing intact behind the scenes while the chronos clock kept telling you that you were late. The keeping is over. The hour has begun. Walk into it